When the lights went out, Part 1, the flicker. The Mason family had just sat down to dinner when it happened. Claire Mason was halfway through telling her husband David about her latest work project when the lights flickered once, twice, and then darkness engulfed their suburban Boston home. The hum of the refrigerator ceased, the gentle whir of the air conditioning fell silent, and in that sudden stillness they could hear each other's breathing. "Power's out," David said unnecessarily, the glow of his phone illuminating his face. "No kidding," their 16-year-old daughter Emma replied, her voice carrying that particular teenage blend of amusement and exasperation. "Mom, where are the candles?" Claire rose from her chair, the muscle memory of her home's layout guiding her through the darkness. "I'll get them. Ethan, are you okay?" Their 10-year-old son's voice came small from across the table. "Is it just our house, Dad?" David was already scrolling through his phone. "No, looks like it's widespread. Social media's blowing up with reports all over the city. Maybe the whole Northeast." "The whole Northeast?" Emma's voice had lost its edge of sarcasm. "How is that even possible?" As Claire returned with candles and matches, the warm glow spread across their dining table, illuminating 4 plates of rapidly cooling pasta. Outside their windows, the neighborhood had transformed into an unfamiliar landscape of shadows, the usual ambient light pollution erased as if by a cosmic eraser. "Cell networks are getting congested," David reported, his thumb still moving across his screen. "Everyone's trying to figure out what's happening at once." "Can we still eat dinner?" Ethan asked, pragmatic as always. Claire smiled in the candlelight. "Of course we can. And let's not worry just yet. Power outages happen." "Not across the entire Northeast," Emma muttered. David set his phone down. "Actually, we should conserve our phone batteries. We don't know how long this might last." "How long?" Emma's voice pitched higher. "You think this might be more than a few hours?" Claire reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. "Let's just focus on dinner. Whatever's happening, we're together. And we have food and candles. That's a good start." They ate in the flickering light, the absence of background noise, the refrigerator hum, the distant sound of televisions from neighboring houses, the occasional notification ping, creating a strange cocoon around them. Claire found herself noticing details she usually missed: the sound of forks against plates, Ethan's habit of chewing with his mouth slightly open, the way Emma tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. After dinner, they gathered in the living room, the ancient battery-powered radio David had insisted on keeping in their emergency kit now center stage on the coffee table. The news was fragmented, confusing, but the essential facts emerged. A cascading power failure had affected the entire Eastern Seaboard, from Maine to Virginia. The cause was unclear, but officials were assuring the public it was not an attack or sabotage, rather a technical failure of unprecedented scale. "They are saying it could be days before power is fully restored in all areas," David reported, his face solemn in the candlelight. "Days?" Emma and Ethan exclaimed in unison. Claire felt a tightening in her chest, the refrigerator full of food, the medication in the bathroom that needed refrigeration, the project deadline she had next week, the final exam Emma was supposed to take tomorrow. "Well," she said, forcing brightness into her voice, "I guess we're having an adventure." Part 2, the first night. As darkness settled completely, the Mason family made their preparations. David distributed flashlights, assigned battery conservation protocols for their devices, and filled every available container with water, just in case the municipal pumps failed. "Dad, you're being paranoid," Emma said, though she helped fill pitchers and bottles without further complaint. "Better safe than sorry," he replied. "Your grandfather taught me that. He lived through the New York blackout in '77. "What are we going to do about all the food in the fridge?" Claire asked, her analytical mind already calculating spoilage times. "Let's eat the perishables first," David said. "If this goes beyond tomorrow, we'll figure something out." Later, as Ethan was readied for bed, his questions came rapid-fire. "Will my game console be okay when the power comes back? What about my Minecraft world? Is everyone in America having a blackout? Are people trapped in elevators?" Claire sat on the edge of his bed, the flashlight pointed at the ceiling, creating a spotlight effect. "The electronics will be fine. Your Minecraft world is saved on servers that probably have backup power. And no, it's not all of America, just the eastern part. And yes, some people might be stuck in elevators, but emergency services will be helping them." "Are they scared?" Ethan's eyes were wide. Claire considered this. "Probably. But being scared is okay when unexpected things happen. The important thing is what you do next." "What do you do?" "You take a deep breath. You think about what you know. You help others if you can. And you remember that most problems are temporary." Ethan seemed to consider this. "Like the power coming back on?" "Exactly like that. Mom?" His voice had dropped to a whisper. "Can you leave the flashlight?" Claire handed it to him. "Just turn it off when you're ready to sleep. We need to conserve the batteries." Downstairs, she found Emma and David engaged in a hushed but intense conversation. "It's freaking me out," Emma was saying. "Nobody knows why it happened. What if it's worse than they're telling us?" "The absence of information doesn't mean something sinister," David replied. "Complex systems fail in complex ways." "Your father's right," Claire interjected. "Remember when the internet went down at school last year and everyone thought it was hackers? But it turned out to be a construction crew that accidentally cut a cable." Emma didn't look convinced. "This is different. This is huge." "Which means the explanation is probably huge too. Like a major technical failure, not a conspiracy," David reassured her. A knock at the door startled all three of them. David approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. "It's Mrs. Abernathy," he reported, sounding relieved as he opened the door. Their elderly neighbor stood on the porch, a small flashlight in her trembling hand. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but my emergency phone isn't working, and I wanted to check if this blackout is widespread." "It is," Claire confirmed, guiding the woman inside. "The whole region, apparently." "Are you doing okay? Do you need anything?" "I'm fine, dear, just a bit disoriented. My late husband always handled these sorts of things." She glanced around their candlelit living room. "You all seem well prepared." "Dad's like a Boy Scout," Emma said, some of her usual humor returning. "Always prepared." "Would you like to stay here tonight, Mrs. Abernathy?" David offered. "It might be safer than being alone." The elderly woman hesitated, then nodded. "If it wouldn't be an imposition. My house gets so dark and quiet without the electricity humming." "I'll make up the guest room," Claire said, grateful for a concrete task. As she arranged sheets and blankets in the spare bedroom, Claire could hear David explaining their water rationing system to Mrs. Abernathy, and Emma asking questions about what Boston was like in the old days, before smartphones and constant connectivity. In the strange quietude of the powerless house, surrounded by family and now an unexpected guest, Claire felt an unfamiliar sensation, not quite peace, but something adjacent to it. a stillness that allowed for noticing things usually drowned out by the constant background noise of modern life. Outside the window, she could see stars, more than she'd seen in years from their suburban neighborhood. The light pollution that usually obscured all but the brightest celestial bodies was gone, revealing a glittering tapestry above. For a moment, despite the uncertainty of their situation, she felt a sense of wonder. Part 3. The Community Awakens. The morning brought no restoration of power, but did deliver new clarity. Battery-powered radios across the neighborhood shared the news. A cascading failure had affected 3 major power grids, triggered by what preliminary reports suggested was a solar flare of unusual magnitude. Officials estimated 3 to 7 days before full restoration, with priority given to hospitals, water treatment facilities, and other critical infrastructure. The Mason household awoke to this reality with varying degrees of acceptance. Ethan treated it like an adventure, Emma like an apocalypse, David like a problem to be methodically solved, and Claire somewhere in between, concerned but determined to find the opportunities within the challenge. After a breakfast of cereal with the last of the milk, David called a family meeting. "We need a plan," he announced. "The perishable food in the refrigerator needs to be eaten or shared today. We should check on our neighbors, especially the elderly and those with young children." "I can help with that," Emma volunteered, surprising her parents. The teenager who usually had to be pried away from her social media accounts seemed almost energized by the emergency. "Mrs. Abernathy mentioned that Mr. Patel next door uses an oxygen machine," Claire added. "We should make sure he has what he needs." As they dispersed to their tasks, Claire was struck by how quickly her family had adapted. There were no complaints about lack of internet or television. Instead, there was a focused energy directed toward practical problems. By midday, their front yard had become an impromptu neighborhood command center. David had rolled their charcoal grill onto the driveway and was cooking perishables from several families' refrigerators. Emma and 2 girls from down the street, whom Claire had never seen her daughter speak to before, were organizing a neighborhood patrol to check on vulnerable residents. Ethan was entertaining younger children with elaborate stories, his natural creativity shining in the absence of electronic distractions. Claire, with her project management background, found herself coordinating resources. Who had extra batteries? Whose house had a gas stove that could still be lit manually? Who needed medications refrigerated? And who had coolers and ice? Mrs. Abernathy, seated in a lawn chair under the shade of their oak tree, had become an unexpected asset. During the oil crisis in the 70s, she was telling a group of young parents, we organized neighborhood carpools. 1 person would drive 8 or 9 of us to work each day. We need to think like that now, pooling what we have. As the afternoon progressed, more neighbors arrived, many of whom Claire had only exchanged perfunctory greetings with in the 5 years they'd lived on the street. There was Rodriguez family from the corner house, the Kim family who had moved in last fall, the Smiths with their newborn twins, and Mr. Patel, whose oxygen needs had been temporarily addressed by a neighbor with a small generator. "We should set up a charging station," David suggested. "Peterson has that generator, but it's small. If we organize, maybe 2 hours in the morning and 2 in the evening, people can charge essential devices." The community that emerged in their yard was different from any Claire had experienced before. Without the usual distractions of technology, people were talking, really talking. She learned that Rodriguez had been a civil engineer in Honduras before immigrating, that Kim was an accomplished pianist, that Mrs. Abernathy had once worked as a switchboard operator at the White House during the Kennedy administration. As evening approached, someone produced a guitar. Someone else brought out a collection of board games. children played tag in the fading light, while teenagers, initially aloof and resentful of the technological deprivation, gradually joined in conversations with adults or organized games for the younger kids. Claire found Emma deep in conversation with Mrs. Abernathy. "What were you two discussing so intently?" she asked her daughter later, as they prepared for their second night without power. Emma's expression was thoughtful. "She was telling me about how they used to communicate before texting and social media. Like, they'd make plans in advance and just trust the other person would show up, and they'd write actual letters that took days to arrive." She paused. "It sounds kind of nice, actually. More meaningful." Claire studied her daughter's face in the candlelight. "You've been amazing today, with the neighborhood patrol and helping the younger kids." Emma shrugged, but Claire could see she was pleased. "It's not like there's anything else to do. Still, I'm proud of you." In the living room, David and Ethan were engaged in an epic chess battle, with Mrs. Abernathy offering occasional strategic advice to Ethan. The house was quiet but not silent, filled with the sounds of human activity rather than electronic hum. As Claire crawled into bed that night, the house warmer than usual without air conditioning, she found herself not dreading the days ahead, but curious about what they might bring. Part 4. The challenge deepens. By the third day, the novelty had worn thin for most. The summer heat was building without air conditioning to mitigate it. Devices were dying despite careful rationing. Food preservation was becoming a serious concern. And while the community spirit remained strong, anxiety was rising as municipal water pressure began to falter in some areas, and reports suggested the outage might extend beyond initial estimates. The Mason family awoke to these new challenges with gritty determination. David had been up at dawn, working with Rodriguez and Peterson to rig a water collection system using tarps and rain barrels, anticipating the possibility of water shortages. Claire had cataloged remaining food supplies and organized a community meal plan that would stretch resources. Emma, who had emerged as an unexpected leader among the neighborhood teenagers, arrived at breakfast with news. "The high school is being turned into a relief center. They have generators running, and they're offering cold water, device charging, and information." "How do you know this?" David asked. "Raj's dad is a police officer. He came by on patrol last night and told them." Claire marveled at how quickly the old-fashioned grapevine had re-established itself. Without social media or news alerts, information traveled from person to person, crossing boundaries of age, culture, and socioeconomic status that had seemed impermeable in the connected world. "We should organize a group to go," Claire suggested. "Take everyone's devices that need charging, collect information, bring back water." "I'll lead it," Emma volunteered. Claire hesitated. The high school was nearly 2 miles away, and while their neighborhood had remained calm, there were reports of tensions in other areas. "I'll go with her," David said, reading her concern. "We can take the wagon to transport water jugs and devices." As they prepared to depart, more neighbors arrived, adding phones and batteries to the collection and offering empty containers for water. What had begun as a Mason family expedition quickly evolved into a community effort, with Rodriguez and his teenage son joining, along with Mrs. Kim and 2 other parents. "Be careful," Claire told them, hugging Emma and David. "Stay together." Watching them walk away, pulling the red wagon now laden with devices and empty containers, Claire felt a twinge of anxiety. It was the first time the family had separated since the blackout began. With David and Emma gone, Claire and Ethan turned to their own tasks. The neighborhood meal for that evening needed organizing, and with limited fuel for grills, they needed creative solutions. "We could make a solar oven," Ethan suggested, his face brightening. "I read about it in my science book. A solar oven. Yeah. We use aluminum foil and cardboard boxes to concentrate the sun's heat. It won't be super hot, but it might work for some stuff." Claire smiled at her son's enthusiasm. "Let's try it." Soon their driveway became a science experiment zone, with Ethan directing operations and several other children eagerly participating. Claire watched as her usually video game-absorbed son explained the principles of thermal reflection to his rapt audience, his confidence growing with each question he answered. Mrs. Abernathy settled into her now customary chair under the oak tree, a pile of mending in her lap. "Your boy's quite the teacher," she observed. "Reminds me of my late husband. He was a high school science teacher for 40 years. Claire sat beside her, taking a moment's rest. "I've never seen this side of him. At home, he's usually playing video games or watching YouTube. Sometimes it takes the absence of something to reveal what's really there," the older woman said, her needle flashing in the sunlight. "Like how you can only see stars when the sun goes down." The day progressed with slow, methodical work, preparing food, ensuring the elderly had enough water, organizing shade structures for relief from the heat. Without her usual technological distractions, Claire found herself fully present in each task, noticing details she might otherwise have missed. The changing patterns of sunlight across their yard, the varied tones in people's voices, the intricate social dynamics of the children playing nearby. When David and Emma returned late in the afternoon, tired but successful, their wagon now heavy with water jugs and information pamphlets, the neighborhood gathered to hear their report. "The power company says they're making progress," David announced. "They've restored power to about 30% of the affected areas, focusing on critical infrastructure first. They're still estimating 3 more days for residential neighborhoods like ours." There were groans from the assembled neighbors, but not the panic or anger Claire might have expected. 3 days into the crisis, people had found their rhythm, adjusting expectations and focusing on immediate needs. "The good news," Emma added, "is that they're sending water trucks to neighborhoods tomorrow, and the high school relief center is offering hot meals twice a day." As the information was absorbed and discussed, Claire observed how the initial shock and disorientation had evolved into resilience and adaptation. People who had been strangers 4 days ago were now coordinating meal shares, childcare rotations, and resource distribution with remarkable efficiency. That evening they dined on a hodgepodge of community contributions, cooked in Ethan's surprisingly effective solar ovens and on the charcoal grills. As the sun set, casting long shadows across their impromptu community center, someone produced a battery-powered speaker, and soft music filled the air. Watching her family in this new context, David teaching a group of neighbors how to maximize battery life, Emma organizing a game for children and teenagers, Ethan proudly explaining his solar oven design to Mr. Patel. Claire felt a peculiar sense of fulfillment. The blackout had stripped away the usual distractions and routines, revealing the essential character of her family and their community. As stars emerged in the darkening sky, clearer and more numerous than she'd ever seen from their suburban neighborhood, Claire wondered what would remain of this experience once the power inevitably returned. Part 5. The Light Returns. On the 6th day, without warning, the power returned. The Mason family was having breakfast, peanut butter on crackers, their staple during the final days of the outage, when the refrigerator suddenly hummed to life. The microwave beeped, resetting itself. Lights they'd left switched on days ago blazed in the morning sunlight. For a moment, they all froze, staring at each other. "It's back!" Ethan finally shouted, jumping from his chair. Their initial euphoria, hot showers, cold drinks, television, was tempered by an unexpected sense of displacement. The house, with its mechanical hums and electronic glows, suddenly felt artificially loud after days of natural soundscapes. "I should call work," Claire said, reaching for her phone, now fully charged thanks to yesterday's trip to the relief center. "I need to check my emails," David muttered, already heading for his laptop. Emma hesitated, her phone in her hand but not yet activated. "Do you think the Rodriguezes know? I should tell Sophia." "I'm going to play Minecraft," Ethan declared, making a beeline for his console. But as the day progressed, Claire noticed something unusual. Despite the return of their electronic diversions, the family kept finding reasons to congregate in shared spaces. David worked from home but set up at the dining table rather than his office. Emma texted friends but also spent time on the front porch, watching for neighbors. Ethan played his game but left his door open, calling out commentary to anyone passing by. By afternoon, the front yard gathering had reformed, smaller than before but still vibrant. The conversation now included power restoration reports from other neighborhoods and comparisons of which streaming services were back online, but the underlying connections remained. "It's strange," Mrs. Abernathy remarked, accepting a properly cold glass of lemonade from Claire. "I almost miss it. The quiet, the togetherness. Not the heat, though. Definitely not the heat." Claire understood exactly what she meant. "I wonder how long this will last," she said, gesturing to the neighborhood gathering. "Once everything's fully back to normal." "That depends on all of you," the older woman replied. "Connections need tending, like gardens. They don't maintain themselves." As evening approached, David fired up the grill one last time. Not from necessity now, but by choice. The Rodriguezes brought salad, the Kims contributed dessert, and Mrs. Abernathy shuffled over with her famous lemonade, now properly chilled. "I propose a toast," Mr. Peterson said, raising his glass as the group gathered around the picnic table that had become their community dining hall. "To the great blackout of 2023, which showed us the light." Laughter and raised glasses met his pun, but Claire could sense the truth beneath it. The blackout had illuminated aspects of their lives and community that had been obscured by the constant glow of screens and the incessant hum of modern convenience. Later, as they prepared for bed in their now climate-controlled home, with devices charging and the television murmuring in the background, Claire found Emma sitting on the front porch, gazing at the street where lights now blazed from every house. "Everything okay?" Claire asked, settling beside her. "Yeah," Emma said. "Just thinking." "About—" "Mrs. Abernathy showed me how to knit today. She said she'll teach me to make a scarf if I want to learn." She paused. "And I was thinking maybe we could keep doing the neighborhood dinners sometimes. Like once a month or something." Claire wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "I think that's a wonderful idea. And maybe we could have family game nights without phones, like we did during the blackout." "Definitely." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as Mr. Patel across the street helped Mrs. Abernathy up her front steps, the streetlights casting long shadows behind them. "Mom?" Emma said finally. "I think I want to study power grid engineering in college. Or maybe emergency management. Something that matters when things fall apart." Claire felt a surge of pride. "You'd be excellent at either." Inside, she could hear David reading to Ethan. Not from a tablet or e-reader, but from an actual book they'd rediscovered on their shelves during the blackout. The sound of their voices, one deep and steady, the other occasionally interrupting with questions, filled the house with a warmth no heating system could provide. The Great Blackout, as it was already being called in the news, had revealed something essential, that beneath the complicated infrastructure of modern life, the grids and networks, the devices and systems, lay a simpler, more resilient architecture of human connection. And while the power had returned to their homes, something more significant had been restored to their lives. As Claire and Emma finally went inside, closing the door on a neighborhood once again bright with artificial light, but now also illuminated by new awareness, Claire thought of the stars they'd seen during the blackout. Countless and brilliant, always present above them, but only visible when the foreground darkness allowed their light to shine through. Some things, she realized, could only be seen when the usual lights went out, and some connections, once formed in darkness, would continue to glow long after the power returned.